I'm not sure if you can hear this. Every time I come out here, it doesn't matter what time of the year it is, what time of the day it is, there are always two flies that follow me in here and buzz around, and it's all I can hear, and it winds me up. Right. Anyway, this is the first part of what I hope will be many parts, where I take this 1999 flame red Nissan Micra and make it a bit more spicy with this. This is it's a Volkswagen Audi 1.8 turbo. This particular one, it came in many guises, is an AUM, which this particular engine came out of a 1.8T Audi TT. I think it's one of the later ones. Specifically, it was a roadster. I'll go more into that in a minute, but the plan of this whole thing is to shoehorn that into the engine bay of this thing. I'll just open this up. Bonnet stick. And I'm not quite sure if there's enough. Oh, there's a spark. I'm not sure if there's enough charge in the battery to start it another time, but we'll see. 11.4 volts. Alright, let's go. Chops away. That's the fuel light. Fuel in this tank is about 3 years old. Will do nicely. Not sure if that was a good idea, because I need to move this again in a sec and it might not have enough to start the engine, but we'll see. Right. 1999 Nissan Micra. I probably ran this for a couple of years before I upgraded to something else. I had a Primera, and then I got a Civic. And this just kind of sat in my unit, not really doing an awful lot. It's a 1 litre CG10DE engine, 54 horsepower from the factory. It's had a few visual upgrades to the car. One of those is this patina effect that I've added. We've got Japanese spec rear lights, drift stitch down here. That wasn't my fault. 15-inch Almera GTI alloys, and they are currently on Rain Sport 3s. Some people say that's a bit of an overkill tyre for a Micra, but I will say, here we are, Rain Sport 3, 195 50 by 15. But I would say that take a slow car and put some good tyres on it, and you've got a slow car that handles well. Especially as it's also on, it's not coilovers, but it is on some Bilstein, it's OEM spec suspension. I don't think it's anything particularly special, and they're on the 35mm lowering springs, but you can't really tell that it's lowered because these cars sag so much on the stock springs that when you put some shiny new lowering springs in, it actually doesn't change the ride height. Pop out rear windows, these are a factory option, but they weren't installed on this car. This was like a base spec, I think, what was it called, equation? The equation is you take a Micra and you minus everything and the result is that you don't even have a cigarette lighter, but I added one in. I also added in this little display thing for the battery voltage, which is quite handy. Rev counter, clocks, obviously not fitted to this car. This car didn't have a tachometer from factory. This is from a higher spec one, plug and play, luckily. And there's a dog. The actual interior itself is from a second facelift, so this is like the last sort of version of this car before they moved over to the K12. If you're picking up any wind noise, sorry if you are, but I can't do much about it. Colour-coded door handles, I did those myself years ago. That's just a scratch, don't worry about that. This plinth here, this boot handle is from a pre-facelift. Second facelift rear wiper, because this one sits flat. The stock one sort of wants to sit like that, which looks a bit rubbish in my opinion. We've got the blue tack mod. That stops this from rattling against the glass. Parcel shelf speakers. Again, all just plug and play stuff, all factory optional. The seats are from an SR, which is kind of like the semi-sporty version of this car, if you believe they actually made one. Sporty in everything but actual performance. It was just basically an appearance package. You got some nicely bolstered seats, got some nice bumpers, and that was it really. CG10DE, so 1 litre. A few small quote-unquote upgrades to this thing. Painted cam cover, these are normally raw aluminium. Airbox, which is from a 1.6 Primera. I'm not really sure if it does anything, to be honest, but it fits right on the throttle body. It's a bit bigger than the standard airbox, so it might do something. I don't know, but it's just one of those mods that people do. And then the snorkel goes down there, down into pretty much the factory position. I think the best mod though is behind here. I can't show you because this heat shield's in the way, but this is a manifold that has been bored out and had a plate welded over it to de-restrict it. These have a really badly restricted manifold from factory. Yeah, this one opens it up a little bit. So yeah, that's the engine. I mean, it's 54 horsepower from factory. I don't actually know what it makes now. The car itself only weighs, let's have a look at here. We got, what's that, 720 kilos? Power to weight is, well, still not great, but it holds its own off the line at the traffic light Grand Prix. So you get to about 30 miles an hour and then everything starts overtaking you, but that's the way it is. Oh, another thing as well, electric windows, all factory. Well, I retrofitted those, but they are factory optional ones. You can kind of tell where the old colour was, because this is the original colour of the interior here. I didn't get the door handles, so you can tell there's a bit of a difference there, so that looks a bit crap. Gear knob I think is from some other Nissan, I don't know, I can't remember where I found it, but there it is. Genuine Nissan floor mats, front and back. There's a load of junk in the back here from where I've been sort of keeping it in storage. Got the pockets in the back as well. It's a nice little upgrade if you've got kids and you want to be cleaning them out constantly. Other than that, no real creature comforts. Even the cigarette lighter, this one here, there wasn't one installed from factory. It was just a plastic blank there, but the wiring and the fuse was all there in place for it. All I had to do was just find the actual metal shield and just put it in there and plug it in the back, and it worked. So that's a really basic tour around the car. So I'm just going to try and park this thing somewhere a little bit more appropriate, and then we'll get back in and have a look at the engine. See if it starts again. Oh, I didn't mention 74,000 miles on the clock. I just tried to use my own keys. Oh, just about. The tachometer sticks for a little bit. It's quite funny. Right, let's move this. Right, back in the unit then. We can get a better look of this engine. What I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to pull it out so that you can see it better. Alright, okay. Workshop's a bit of a mess at the moment. Right, so engine. So this was pulled from an Audi TT Roadster, 150 horsepower version, of the 1.8T. Comes in like a million different configurations and combinations that depending on which car they came out of. There is an absolute ton of crap on this thing. A lot of it's just like boost pipes. You've got the charge pipe down here, it comes out on this side. We've got the intake on this side, so everything kind of comes out on one side here and then goes in on this side. Ideally I would have liked to have the intake on the other side, but I think we might be able to make it work depending on how this all fits in the engine bay. I think I'm probably going to, well, I'm definitely going to get rid of the aircon compressor because there's no way air conditioning is going to be in this car. There's just no point in even trying. I don't think I'd have the room for the condenser and all that other stuff, even if I wanted to put it in. But one thing I will be removing is this secondary air intake and the associated gubbins that goes with it. So it is a bit of a lump, but it's... wang it in, I guess. Gearbox is a 5-speed. I'm not sure where the markings are for it. I'll be honest, I don't really know my Volkswagen stuff all that well, so this is a bit of a learning experience. But yeah, 5-speed gearbox. I can't use it because at some point this happened. The gearbox mount just basically sheared right off. There you go, it sort of goes on like that. There you go. I need to replace this gearbox. Not too fussed about that, they're not too expensive to get hold of. I'm obviously not going to put this in the car because that would be insane. That said, I do have JB Weld. So I am going to JB Weld this back together purely for mocking the engine up in the bay. I need to know where all the mounts go, how I'm going to modify the chassis mount and all that stuff. So I need it to be in place at least, just so that I can get it all ready for a new gearbox to go in. But no, I won't be driving it with that. First part of phase 1 is to get a welder. I do not possess a welder in this absolute mess of a workshop. I need a welder. I'm not going to get very far if I don't have one. So that's going to be next on the list. So that's going to be in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to buy a welder. Step 1 is to buy a welder. Step 2, learn how to weld. Step 3, so what I also need to do is get the gearbox back on the engine again. Took it off to put it on this engine stand just so it was a little bit easier to move around, but we are obviously going to have to put it back on again when we start mocking this thing up. But first of all, let's get that mount back onto there, so when I come back it will be on there and clamped on and hopefully ready to sit there and cure for a bit. The gearbox itself, from what I understand, is pretty good. Goes into all the gears, no problem. Seems to be in pretty good nick. So what I'll probably end up doing is just saving this as a spare box for parts. So I'm sure the gear set side is perfectly fine. Maybe if I want to have a separate one ready, or maybe just do, I don't know. It's always good having parts spare, I guess. But yeah, the casing is toast. There's no way this is seeing a car again. So yeah, everything else though looks pretty good. I'm going to get on with just getting a bit of JB Weld on there and get it clamped down. So back in a moment. It is done. Right, so I went over the joins with some brake and clutch cleaner just to get any stuff off of there, any grease, because there was quite a bit. And as you can see, quite a bit of squeeze out. It's probably gone into the threads there. Focus on that. Yeah. That isn't perfect. I guess we'll find out when we try and stick a bolt in there. Like I say, I can always just go through with a tap if I absolutely have to. I'm not too confident in this. Like, there's that massive gap there. If I had the shard, I would put that back in, but I just don't. So I suppose I could have packed it with JB Weld. What I'm going to do is I'll stick a strap around this whole thing, just to sort of mechanically reinforce it. And what I've also done is I've just taken some zip ties and chained them together, just clamp this down, because I wanted to use these clamps I had. They're a Lidl special, not long enough to They didn't clamp wide enough to be able to get around there, so I've had to use the bondage method instead. But it works. I'll probably end up doing something similar when I put everything back together. I'll probably put a strap around the whole thing just to keep it all clamped down whilst it's being mocked up in the car. Give that a little while to cure. Be a few days before I come back here, so this should be rock solid by the time I come back. It's not the best work. There's still a visible crack there, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to see. Okay, gearbox is just in its resting place for the next couple of however long. In the meantime, I've got the loom here. These other things always look more intimidating than they actually are. I'm not sure how much of this I need to keep, given that I'm looking over here and I'm seeing light bulbs, so that's going to be for, well, the lights. So a lot of this would probably go, because the Micra's loom will remain largely intact. Trying to make it so that the two looms are kind of independent from each other, the body loom and the engine loom. There's probably going to be some crossover because I guess the engine needs to know certain things from the body, but I guess we'll see what we can get away with. So we've got the ECU down here, which is this one. It's one of the later ones. We've got this in here. This looks like it goes into the cabin, judging by this little shield thing we got. And over here we've got that's either the coil pack loom or the injector loom, one of the two. Yeah, these are the injectors over here, and these are the coil packs. Tons of sensors on these things. We've got what looks like a main fuse box. It's fairly close to some fairly chunky cabling here, as well as what looks like a battery ground. There's the battery terminal right there. So yeah, this probably would normally sit right next to the battery or on top of it maybe. I'm not sure what this little thing is. It's like a little plastic box. I'm trying to get this thing open. What is it? It's a relay box. I need to find a wiring diagram for this thing. Work out what's what. So yeah, that's the loom. Hopefully it's all here. There's no like four-wheel drive Haldex stuff that I need to worry about. Front-wheel drive gearbox, which is what I need. I've got the shifter here as well. Maybe just move that. Cool. The Micra is a rod change. This kind of makes the conversion a little bit easier because all I have to do is just make sure that these end up in the engine bay where the gearbox is. I don't need to worry about like modifying the length of the rod and making sure that it engages all the gears properly. As long as that is connected to that, which is connected to, well, not that gearbox, then we should be good. Nice and easy. Inside here we've got one of the drive shafts. This will be the passenger side drive shaft, the shorter of the two. The longer one is just over here. We've got the clutch, still a little bit of meat on there, so we'll be using that for the time being until we get a chance to upgrade. We've got the electronic throttle pedal, which we will definitely be needing, so that's good. I think it's missing the rubber bit that's supposed to go on there, but that's fine. Might be able to put the factory Micra one on there for a bit of a stealth look, who knows. Bolts, starter motor over there. I think it's okay to use. I guess we'll find out when we try and turn the key. And a bit more earth cable over here. So that's pretty much it as far as parts that we have. I picked this whole lot up for about 300 quid. So now that we've got them both together in the same kind of frame, you can kind of see, yeah, it'll fit. Actually, I know it's going to fit because I'm not the first person to do this swap. Funnily enough, there's actually someone who's already done this before me. Fortunately, I don't really have any information on it because it's just a case of, hey, I put a 1.8T in the Micra and here it is. So there's no real information on it. So I'm kind of having to figure a lot of this out for myself. But what I do know is that it does fit. This engine with the gearbox will fit in this engine bay. And it will line up properly and it won't hit anything except for this. It's the brake master cylinder and its booster. So what the other guy who did this swap did was he ended up removing the booster and just running the master cylinder without a booster. I'm not sure if I want to do that but I guess sometimes you just got to get it done, right? So I'm thinking up some possible solutions, including doing either looking for different master cylinders, so some you can get some shorter ones, or maybe I can do what Ford did with the Mondeo, where they have the master cylinder and the booster on the what would be the passenger side here in the UK, and they have like a bar that goes across, and kind of like a torsion bar that's connected to the pedal, and it goes to the other side. Or I could just not run a brake booster, which that would ultimately solve the problem. But who knows? I don't know the method that was used to put the engine in. There's certain considerations you have to take when you put an engine in a car that isn't supposed to go there, such as like the angle that the engine is supposed to sit at. You can kind of see that it's kind of kicks back a little bit. But if you look at the oil cap, it's actually fairly straight. And that is because these engines actually kick back quite a lot in the engine bay. So there is a good chance that this bit right here, this belt cover, cam belt cover, will hit that. What's important is that it fits. Otherwise, I would be looking at this right now and thinking there is no way, because it looks like a massive engine, but most of it is just piping and sensors and wires. I mean, when the engine loom is on here, it's going to look like an absolute mess. It's a newer, more complicated engine. The CG10, by contrast, actually fairly dinky. Oh yeah, ignore this, by the way. This is the PCV not going into the intake box like it should do. Yeah, I'm surprised it's worked with that, but it has. So this mount right here, or where I don't actually have this mount, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to have to fabricate something, and I'm going to try and use the existing mount, not this mount. I don't know, maybe, but this bracket right here. But I will have to beef it up, because this engine weighs like 50 kilos or something silly like that. It weighs nothing because it's all aluminium. It's only 1000cc. It doesn't weigh anything. Whereas this is iron. God, I have to move the camera out just to even get it in frame. This is an iron block, so significantly heavier. As far as like strengthening the front end's concerned, I don't know. I guess I'm just gonna have to jack the car up and see what bends. So gearbox side, you can't really see, but it's underneath the battery there. Yeah, you can't see it at all, but there is a gearbox mount. What I end up doing is basically making a plate that goes over here, a cotton reel bush that goes in there, and then just sort of translating it across like that. If you look at the center of the engine here, the mount is quite far off to the front, so it's not too bad. And the reason why that's okay is because at the back of the engine, I think it's at the back or it's at the front, there is a dog bone mount at the front. This engine does not have a mount at the front, I don't think. No, it does. I don't see one. I know the VR6 does, but this one doesn't. What it does have, oh, clicky knees, is some big hefty mounts right there, and I assume I'm gonna have to look at some diagrams, but that would tie into some sort of rear engine mount. Coming off the cross member is a center member that runs from the cross member all the way underneath, like a longitudinal member that runs to the back of the engine bay. So I'll be able to strengthen that and then have the engine sort of supported by that center member. So there'll be 3 points of contact, just like the engine would have had from factory, just like this engine does now, just that the forward backwards would be from the back, not from the front. I'm going to try and not cut up the chassis legs. I'm going to try and not mess with the engine mounts on the body, because the less I do to the body, the better. So yeah, that's mechanically getting it in. I obviously need to make sure that the gearbox is situated so that the drive shafts line up with the wheels, and I need to make sure that the height is correct as well. Obviously, as I mentioned before, I've got to make sure that the angle is correct. As for cooling, you can see here we've got the world's smallest radiator. I know like a lot of Civics have small radiators like this, but they're quite thick, and this is a really thin one. Yeah, it's just a really dinky little thing. To be honest, I think what I'm probably going to do is see if my spare Primera radiator fits. That is a full width radiator. If that fits with everything being at the front that it is, then happy days. If not, then I'm going to have to probably just go for a Civic radiator. That's a common upgrade for these when people are putting extra power in. As for the body and the chassis and everything not engine related, as I said earlier, phase 1, I'm not touching anything in here aside from stuff that's needed to get it through an MOT. So on the gear shifter, obviously I need to change all of that, but and any interior wiring. So all this is going to come out, but it's all going back in again. I need to segment this project out properly and get my priorities straight, otherwise I will have a car with a nice interior with no engine in the front. But in terms of long-term plans, yeah, it's going to be some nice bucket seats, I think. Going to have an interior. The back interior is going to be removed, but it's going to be carpeted, so it's going to be nice and not sort of full rattly race car spec. Just a nice little two-seater weekend toy. That's the plan for the thing anyway. In terms of the actual power for the engine, 150 horsepower doesn't seem like an awful lot. Bear in mind, that thing makes 50. So I'm tripling the horsepower just by putting that in there as it is now, without changing anything. It will make 150 horsepower. If I then get it mapped, these things can make 200 without making any changes to anything as well. Wheels I'll keep the same for now. I'm probably going to have to keep it 15 because of brakes, because I am going to need to upgrade the brakes, and I haven't discussed that because I don't know what I'm going to do. So intentions for the project, intentions for these videos, the channel. I'm limited by just a normal lifestyle. I've got a full-time job, I've got a family, I have other financial commitments that are going to limit how quickly I can do things like buy parts. I'm not going to be uploading every day or every week or anything like that. It is going to be when I've got stuff to upload, I will upload it. That is a tour of the car, that is a tour of the engine, that is the plan. Next up is I need to buy a welder. I'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks. I need to then learn how to weld. So the next video you see will probably be me getting a welder and blowing holes in metal. Hopefully I will see you in the next one where I'm a little bit less rambly and I know what the hell I'm doing.